You are listening to the IFH Podcast Network. For more amazing filmmaking and screenwriting podcasts, just go to ifhpodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome to the Successful Screenwriter Podcast, where we discuss anything and everything screenwriting. Here we interview successful screenwriters and filmmakers to find out just what it takes to make it in the industry. Just a heads up, this episode is brought to you by my book, The Guide for Every Screenwriter, which has been listed as one of the best screenwriting books of all time by the Book Authority. If you're looking for something that reveals the secrets of screenwriting in an easy to understand and engaging way, then this is the book for you. You can find The Guide for Every Screenwriter at thesuccessfulscreenwriter.com/books. Now, on to the show. All right, welcome to the podcast. This is actually pretty cool. We are coming up on the holiday season. Christmas is right around the corner, and I was fortunate enough to watch an exclusive on Roku called Christmas Lovers Anonymous. I actually have the writer of that film here with me, Lisa Hepner. Lisa, thanks for being on.
Yeah, thanks, Geoffrey. Thanks for having me.
So you're kind of like a Christmas holiday film aficionado. I mean, this is like what you do, right?
Yeah, I mean, Christmas is kind of my brand right now.
You've got A Christmas Wish, and Hudson was another one. You've got the Christmas Lovers Anonymous. I know that you've just optioned another one we can't chat about. I heard they might be on a Christmas TV series. So lots of cool stuff coming out your way. Before we kind of launch into this, I want to get a little bit of your origin story and kind of what led you into this process.
So as many of us that's probably listening to this podcast, I've been screenwriting forever. I want to say over 10 years. So I've been a screenwriter for a long time. I started doing more kind of comedy and rom-com, and I was having a little bit of success, like some placement in contests and stuff, but nothing really big. And so I started watching Hallmark movies with my mom on Christmas, and that was kind of our thing. And then I thought, wow, like, I wonder if I could write one of these type, movies. And so I kind of watched enough, and I kind of started to catch on to the formula. And I decided to start writing them. At that time, this was about 3 years ago that I started writing Christmas movies. Okay. At that time, it was kind of like this untapped market, but now I see all these things on Facebook and everybody wants to write a Christmas movie, which is cool because there's plenty of room for Christmas movie writers. But yeah, I figured that like for example, Hallmark, the last statistics I heard, it buys 40 Christmas movies every year, and it'll probably get even more and more.
That's amazing.
And and so I thought to myself, I was like, what really production companies, if you think about it, buy that many movies every year? And so I thought that might be like a niche that I could break into.
The very first one you wrote, A Christmas Wish, was that a spec script, or was that something that you had made like a relationship with and they requested?
Yeah, no, I wrote a bunch of Christmas spec scripts. I probably had maybe 3 or 4 before I started marketing to producers. And Christmas Wish in Hudson, ironically, didn't start out as a as a Christmas movie. It started out just as a romance. I think I originally had it called Widowed in Washington or something like that, kind of a spin on Sleepless in Seattle.
Yeah.
But I changed it to a Christmas movie when I was kind of had that idea, like, oh, Christmas movies, is a niche. So yeah, those were spec scripts that I wrote and then, sent out to producers.
So when you were out, were you querying?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
So the first, so let's see. Christmas Wish in Hudson, that came about because I was, like, everybody always says that this Hollywood is about relationships, right? And we always hear that, but it's so true because I had a connection with someone that knew someone that was producing Christmas movies, and they read Christmas Wish in Hudson, liked it, and then referred me to this producer. And so that's how I got started. So I
Nice.
really believe in referrals and
Yeah.
mentoring and giving out hands to people, you know.
And you've got to be a strong writer. You know, if you're going to make those networks and connections and take advantage of them, you've got to be able to bring it. So it sounds like that's what you're able to do.
Yeah.
With well, you talked about the formula of writing a Christmas song. Can you give us a little bit more on that?
Yeah. So one interesting thing that I kind of had to get my mind out, kind of get my mind in the right places. I mentioned that I was coming more from the rom-com comedy world.
Yeah.
But Christmas romance, you really want to focus on the romance. Like you don't want to go for the laughs, which is something I had to kind of at first kind of like, I felt like I had to kind of temper like my humor, don't beat up people over the head with jokes or whatever. It's all about the romance between the female and the guy. Although Hallmark is starting to get more, they have some new mandates to where they're getting more open to other stories than just about the romance, which I think is really good.
Yeah.
But yeah, the formula is, you know, usually the girl either goes back to her hometown or goes somewhere and either reconnects with an old love or meets a new love. They get together. There could be some friction at first. And then, of course, you know, the all is lost moment that something happens to tear them apart. And then they get together and then they kiss at the end. So that's kind of a simplistic formula.
Got to have the kiss. I mean, I waited 2 hours for that.
Yes.
So, do you find, let's see, did you ever find yourself trying to worry about where commercial breaks would come in or anything like that? Because I know there are some writers that will write for Hallmark, and they'll keep in mind that like every 8 minutes there's a commercial break or something. Did that ever kind of play into your mind when you were trying to write Christmas Lovers Anonymous or anything like that?
I did. So ironically, so when I studied the Hallmark type formula, and that goes the same for Lifetime, because Lifetime and Hallmark have very similar formula. But I noticed that it was 9 acts, you know, because I followed the commercials and did all that. So when I wrote my spec scripts, I did write it in the 9 acts, hopefully, you know, thinking that it would go to Hallmark or Lifetime. So I had those in there. Roku, from what I can see when I've watched them on Roku, I don't know if yours had commercials, but mine did have commercials. And I'm not sure if they put the same breaks in there. I wasn't aware.
They used 3 breaks of 5. So they kind of they try to bump it into their own 3-act structure. But that is like, I've written scripts that have been repped at Lifetime and came so close to pulling the trigger. But when I was writing those specs, I kept in mind, like, I'm going to have basically essentially like 9 act outs. I'm going to have 9 moments of suspense where you could throw a commercial in where you don't know what happens. And at first you go, oh, that can be kind of weird. That can be kind of wonky. But really all it does for your script is it just makes it a faster read, honestly, because you keep, okay, what's going to happen? And then you turn the page. Okay, this happens. And so you just kind of keep that, it keeps your pace up, I think. And so if someone is reading it and they don't realize that you wrote it for like 9 acts, you wrote it for 9 act out, you know, shocking cliffhangers, they're just going to go, oh, wow, that's interesting. And they're just going to keep reading. So I don't think it's bad to do it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I have heard a couple producers that I've spoken with say that you don't have to do the 9 breaks, but I just do it intuitively now. And like you said, I like to think about it like, oh, I'm going to end on a cliffhanger where they're almost maybe something's going to happen and then the phone rings or something happens. So
Well, what I noticed about Christmas Lovers Anonymous, what I really thought was super cute, is how you play off of the supporting characters are a lot of fun. They've got a lot of sass. They've got a lot of characterization to them where they're funny. That's where you're bringing in the comedy per se, and you're playing them off of a more torn central character, which I think is a good way of working in your ability of bringing in comedy.
Right, exactly. And just the backstory on that, and this kind of goes back to relationships. So the way that that one came about
Sure.
was the producer for Christmas Wish in Hudson, was obviously filming that, and she had a director named Elizabeth Snodderly, and that director liked Christmas Wish in Hudson so much that she had an idea, which was Christmas Lovers Anonymous. And she called me and she said, I've got this idea about this person that has to go online on this anonymous
Yeah.
forum. And she pitched it to me and she said, could you write it? And I said, sure. And so she
Awesome.
hired me to write that. So again, it's about relationships. Like I probably wouldn't have gotten that job had I not,
Yeah. And
been easy to
strong
work with
writing
on.
though. I mean, you have
Yeah.
the chops. And I do think it's cute that it has this like you've got mail feel to it, where
Yeah.
they're meeting each other in real life, but they don't realize who they are. And then the cute Santa theme and Christmas
Right.
theme to it is absolutely adorable. So I mean it definitely plays.
Yeah.
What do you think is going on with the market? Are you concerned that it's going to get saturated, especially with so many people realizing this is something that you can tap into?
I don't think so because, like I said, Hallmark and Lifetime are kind of the big wigs.
Okay.
And so they're buying, 40 movies a year, but there's Netflix, there's Disney Plus, there's a new network called GAC, which was the CEO from Hallmark went and started his own network. There's Up TV, and now there's Roku, which is getting in the Christmas genre. So I think there's plenty of
so it's not too late.
No, I don't think it's too late because I think people are just realizing that, after Thanksgiving or that time of year, everyone wants to just sit down and watch a Christmas movie. So
I just love that you're such a success story. I mean, I've been writing for 15 years and I've been putting the effort in there and starting to see things finally turn in my own career, and to see someone like yourself who's put in a decade plus of work, has really tried to master the craft for what it is, to find success. I mean, you're the reason that other writers should have hope. And I hope that they can appreciate really what you've gone through to get here. Because if you're anything like me, you've had your own dark night of the soul.
Oh, totally. I mean, I think every screenwriter, even now that I have 2 movies released, but it was like, I still sometimes then after that, I was like, now what? Or, and before that, it was totally rejection after rejection. And sometimes you wonder like, why am I even in this field? You have to be really thick skinned.
Let me ask you something. Yeah. Does it land that you have 2 produced movies that are on a network? I mean, does it land? I look at my own successes and I'm so busy with my head down that I don't realize everything I've achieved. And so I'm just curious, for you personally, do you got 2 done? You know what I mean?
I think it kind of has. I think it will hit me more when, I just watched one of them with my family, and that's when it kind of really hit me like, oh, okay. But I'm so busy with the next project that it's like, you're right, you're always on to the next thing, but it's starting to sink in.
Oh, good.
And I feel very grateful. And yes, I'm very blessed. So.
I'm sure that checks help too.
Yeah, that's true.
All right. What kind of tips do you have that I haven't dipped into as far as anything goes for writers out there that are really interested in dipping their toes into trying to write a holiday film or a Christmas film?
Right. Well, so I guess even before the holiday Christmas film, that I would kind of just say to find a niche. I know some agents and managers have said advice that's contrary to that, like you don't need a niche. But for me, it was easier to kind of find a smaller pool because there's such a big pool, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be Christmas movies. It could be like I write, and I'm not saying I write this, but your niche could be like, I write thrillers with strong female protagonists. Yeah. It could be something like that. So what I think helped me, because the way that I just optioned another Christmas limited series yesterday, but I don't think I can give details, awesome. But that happened because once you're in that niche, which mine is Christmas, then people are like, well, what else do you have? And so if you're in a thriller niche or whatever, then you have more movies to submit to people. But so that would be my first thing, is kind of find your niche. If it's Christmas movies, I would say that every page, I mean, it has to be Christmas everywhere. Christmas can't just be like I'm throwing Christmas in there, or I'm setting it at Christmas. Like, it has to be on every page, decorations, themes, activities, what they're doing. So it has to center around Christmas. And I think, honestly, it really is about persistence and continuing to improve your craft.
Yeah.
Study these movies that are out there, even if it's not Hallmark or Lifetime. You can study Netflix Christmas movies or whatever. Study that area and just continue to hone your craft and be persistent.
So niching down can work. From what I'm hearing, niching down is okay as long as you get into that niche and you really figure it out. You study that niche, you watch comps and see what you can steal from them, add to your toolbox. And another thing that I see that you did, which I've preached before, is to really build out your portfolio, to have a lot of different versions of that type of niche that you're going to write in. So when that producer and you hit it off, they say, what do you have next? You can tell them.
Exactly. Yeah. You want to have a good portfolio of work to work with. And then that reminded me of something else.
Yeah.
I forgot what it was now, but I also think you have to be passionate. Like for me, I chose Christmas, but I think, like, what I'm hearing from some other screenwriters is like, oh, you're telling me Christmas is a great market now, I'm going to do Christmas, but they're not really passionate about Christmas.
Oh.
So you also have to, I feel like, if you're not passionate about Christmas, like if you don't just love Christmas, which I do, it's going to come out in your writing. So if you're like forcing yourself to write something just because you think you can sell it, it may not be your best writing. Like you really want to be passionate about it as well.
I think you're absolutely right. When I was watching Christmas Lovers Anonymous, there was this one thing that the central character said that she does, which she calls it the 12 days of Christmas, where she gives out gifts. And I'm watching this and I could be wrong about this, but I go, that writer does that. There's no way that writer just made that up. So am I wrong or am I right? Is that something that you do?
So the funny thing is the director does that. So
okay, all right, I'll take it.
Yeah. So I asked her, I interviewed her. I was like, what are your traditions? What do you do? And that's what she did. And so I incorporated it in the story. But yeah, exactly.
That's what I'm talking about. When you can bring in something pure and beautiful like that, that's real and true, and infuse that into a character and into your script, it comes off as rich. So when I saw that, I went, there's somebody is doing it. I thought it was the writer. I'll take it that it's the director. I'm even better because I thought it was original. It was really cool. It added to the script. It created moments of conflict that you want, and it was a little bit of a fuel there. So, awesome.
And that's where the passion comes in. You know, if your tradition was baking cookies with your mom every year on Christmas Eve or whatever it is, and you put that in there, it'll be really an alive scene. So
I'll give you something. So what I did as a kid during Christmas is my mom and I would make the cookies together, and then she would leave, and I would sit down and read in front of the stove and watch the cookies bake. That was the thing that I did.
Oh, that's nice.
So that's what I would do.
Are you going to do that this year? Maybe.
I probably I'm a little busy. I'll probably make some cookies, sit down, and then let the stove warm me up and read. But it's super cool. So definitely have that passion, because if you're not into something and you're trying to write it just because it's selling, it's probably going to get passed over because it's not going to have that little bit of magic.
Right, exactly. And especially with Christmas movies, they need that magic, that Christmas spirit. So
they really do. Is there any? Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, if you're a Grinch, maybe not. You know,
that's a whole different market.
Right.
All right. So let me ask you this. Is there anything I didn't ask you that I should have before we leave?
I think another thing that's important, because I have talked to other screenwriters and they've kind of been asking me about that. And I think one thing that I think is really important is when you do find that producer, because I've heard that some screenwriters can actually, I hate to use the word blow it at this point, but kind of hamper their ability, is like if a producer gives you notes, you listen to that
Oh,
that
yeah.
producer and you incorporate those notes. Like I know there are babies and we're attached to them and stuff, but if you think about it, at least the way I had to kind of train my mind is that the producer is the buyer. They're
Yeah.
the customer. When they say like, let's do this, let's do that, my goal anyway is to try to say yes. And I
Yep.
think that's why I got that second gig, because if I would have said like, oh no, and I would have been difficult to work with, they probably would have been like, okay, we're not going to hire her to write this next one or whatever.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, a producer doesn't give you notes for you to say no.
Right.
If they wanted to give you notes because they need to say, they won't give you notes. Producers giving you notes because they want the changes. They might be nice about
Right.
it, but they want you to change it because they're the money.
Exactly.
And as much as married as this baby is to you, because we're writers, we bleed onto these pages. We put our souls into the pages, but to think that your script is unchangeable and perfect is arrogant. And this is an industry of working with people. So producers are going to give you those notes. And then you say, yes. Now, what I like is when I get a note from a producer that I have no idea how to incorporate. And then I go, okay, this is going to be a fun challenge. And that's what I do. I look at notes as a challenge. How do I make the script better by incorporating these notes? And so for me, it becomes a fun process and not I'm a terrible writer because I have all these notes. It's what can I do to make sometimes crazy notes work?
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's a key. I think that's a really great way that you said it, is to kind of shift your mind instead of like, oh, this is a bad producer's note, or like, how am I going to do this, and get overwhelmed, to like shift it and be like, this is fun. I'm going to try to take this note and see how I can figure it out. Right.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I have the mindset of, I don't know if anybody could do this, but I know I can. So I'm glad glad I'm on the gig.
That's the way to do it, though.
I get it.
You got to have that mindset. Yeah.
So Lisa, where can people find you? Where social media, websites, or however you're interested in interacting?
Sure. I mean, I'm on Facebook under Lisa Hepner, and I'm on Twitter. I just got back on Twitter. I was off for a long time. I'm also on LinkedIn. I obviously don't have those links with me, but you can find me under Lisa Hepner.
We'll hook you up. We'll hook you up your links there on the show notes, so people can stop by and give you a buzz. And thanks again for being so active in the community. It's so great to have writers like you out there and really mentoring other writers about, how to find success, where to come from. I saw you online. I saw that she does this. I was like, okay, well, I got to have her on the show now. She's going to be putting herself out there trying to help the next generation.
Yeah, no, thank you. And thank you for this podcast.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share in your social media, where you can tag us at The Successful Screenwriter.